In a quiet corner of early America, a chilling event unfolded that would haunt the nation's memory for centuries. Salem, a small village in New England, became the stage for a tragedy born of fear, suspicion, and the relentless grip of superstition. The dark yet compelling history of the Salem Witch Trials invites us to journey back. Imagine walking through cobblestone streets under a brooding sky with the soft murmur of a community that clung to ancient beliefs and struggled with the uncertainties of a new world. In this narrative, we will explore the outbreak of hysteria that overtook Salem, where neighbors turned against each other in a desperate search for explanations. Each whispered accusation added fuel to the fire of public paranoia, and every frightened glance reinforced the narrative of evil lurking just beneath the surface. This account chronicles not only the events of a troubled era, but also the vulnerabilities of human nature when confronted with inexplicable tragedies, with a reflective and compassionate tone. During the late 17th century, the landscape of New England was marked by a complex blend of religious fervor, social anxiety, and strict moral discipline. A powerful influence came from the Puritan settlers, whose lives were governed by a rigid belief system that demanded unwavering piety and obedience. In this environment, any deviation from accepted norms. Historical records reveal that economic hardships, coupled with political uncertainties, created a climate of worry and instability. Amid this backdrop, mysterious occurrences and unforeseen tragedies were hastily attributed to supernatural causes. Inhabitants of Salem and surrounding communities found themselves grappling with forces they could neither see nor understand. Fear spread quickly as whispers of witchcraft. The intertwining of faith and superstition provided fertile ground for suspicion, as community members searched for scapegoats to explain misfortunes, illnesses, and natural disasters. As rumors grew wilder, a pervasive dread took hold, transforming everyday interactions into potential grounds for harboring deception and malevolence. The fervor of the age not only sharpened the suspicion. In the heart of Salem Village, daily life wove together the threads of community, faith, and conflict in a tapestry that was both rich and deeply complicated. The villagers went about their routines, tending to farms, crafting household goods, and conducting lively market exchanges, all under the careful watch of a strict moral order. Small gatherings at the local meeting house brought neighbors together to share news, while persistent undercurrents of personal rivalry and old family disputes simmered quietly in the background. Despite the shared commitment to religious principles, differences in wealth and status often stirred latent tension among the citizens, setting the stage for mistrust and suspicion. The charm of Salem was colored by its rustic traditions and the simplicity of rural living, yet the same close-knit fabric that offered comfort also amplified private conflicts. In whispered conversations on porch steps and in the muted clatter of everyday work, grievances and ambitions intermingled, reflecting a society where personal and collective identities were deeply intertwined. As members of the community navigated the delicate balance between cooperation and competition, every unexpected hardship was immediately met with both empathy and a cautious readiness to assign blame. This interplay of cooperation and conflict laid a subtle yet potent foundation for the hysteria that was soon to take hold. The familiarity of every face. The initial tangles of hysteria in Salem began subtly, with small incidents and unexplained behaviors that quickly evolved into anxiety and dread. In the early days, peculiar occurrences were noted by those living in close quarters, and even the most rational minds found themselves questioning the familiar. It started with minor quirks, unexplained fits. As strange symptoms appeared with alarming frequency, whispers of witchcraft began to spread, making the ordinary seem ominous and unfamiliar. Gradually, the murmur of suspicion grew louder, fueled by the intense fear that gripped the hearts of Salem's residents. Each unexpected illness or untimely mishap was seen as a sign of a hidden evil. The community, already battling economic hardships and the burdens of strict religious observance, found themselves vulnerable to rumors and innuendo. The cumulative effect of these small events created a scenario where a once peaceful village became a complex maze of fear and uncertainty. In such an atmosphere, reason yielded to emotion, each whispered rumor further fanned. As neighbors began to observe one another more closely, Details and differences in routine took on sinister significance. The faintest oddity in behavior was magnified until it resembled a proof of malevolent influence. By the time the initial incubations of hysteria had fully taken hold, a palpable tension resonated throughout Salem. The community's collective imagination, the growing sense of impending doom, made it impossible for anyone to dismiss even the smallest detail. Overwhelmed by the fear of unseen forces, Salem was on the brink of a crisis that would soon escalate beyond control. In this charged atmosphere, the growing clamor of accusations and the relentless pulse of superstition created a palpable pressure. As the grip of hysteria tightened, isolated claims of witchcraft swiftly escalated into a wild frenzy of accusations that tore through the fabric of Salem's community. Ordinary interactions were transformed into battlegrounds of suspicion, where even the most mundane behavior was scrutinized for signs of evil. In a climate where fear outpaced reason, neighbors began. The community's long-standing disputes, whether born from property disagreements or ancient rivalries, now found a volatile outlet in the form of witchcraft claims. With the growing intensity of the panic, the local authorities were forced to intervene. The arrest of several individuals, initially based on circumstantial and often dubious evidence, marked the beginning of a relentless series. Homes that once offered shelter and warmth became sites of interrogation and public shaming. The process of arrest and subsequent questioning was filled with a grim mixture of formality and raw fear. Even the respected pillars of the community were not immune, as age-old enmities and personal grudges morphed into lethal allegations. Every arrest acted like a spark. Families were torn apart by baseless accusations, and the town's social order began to crumble under the weight of mistrust. People who once shared laughter and camaraderie now harbored deep-seated suspicion and a growing dread of the unknown. In this charged environment, the line between true crime and deliberate fabrication blurred, as every misfortune was systematically linked. Within the somber walls of Salem's courtrooms, the legal proceedings unfolded as a somber and baffling spectacle, blending the difficult terrain of judicial procedure with the wild surge of superstition. The trials were marked by an unusual reliance on spectral evidence and personal testimonies steeped in fear, which made it nearly impossible for justice to prevail. In these charged proceedings, even the seasoned and respected members of the community found themselves caught in an atmosphere where facts were distorted by panic and allegations. Every courtroom session became a stage for a tragic drama, where the weight of communal distrust was palpable and the scale of reason was lost amid swirling rumors. The narratives presented in court were steeped in personal biases and old grudges, often obscuring any sense of fair judgment. The legal authorities, navigating the turbulent waters of public opinion and unwavering superstitions, sometimes struggled to separate genuine grievances from fabricated tales of malevolence. Within this charged environment, the trials took on an almost theatrical quality. Ordinary individuals were thrust into roles they never sought, their fates decided by a combination of haphazard evidence and the emotional fervor of a community in turmoil. Each session deepened the public's belief that the devil was at work among them, a notion so powerful that even the most rational minds could no longer resist its pull. Social influences and communal pressure fed into the proceedings, as neighbors looked on with a mix of horror, melancholy, and a grim sense of inevitability. By the time the trials had run their course, the entire structure of Salem was transformed. The judicial process, entwined with personal vendettas and collective panic, left behind scars that would resonate. The echoes of those courtroom moments lingered, serving as a stark reminder of a time when the written rules of law bowed to the overwhelming forces of fear. Slowly, as the trials progressed, every judgment passed and every verdict reached deepened the pervasive atmosphere of despair, marking each moment with an indelible signature of communal tragedy. In the wake of the witch trials, Salem was left scarred and its community forever altered. In the immediate aftermath, a somber mood enveloped the town as families struggled to rebuild lives shattered by accusation and loss. The trials not only resulted in tragic personal stories, but also ignited a deep reflection on the nature of justice. In the silence that followed, The wounds inflicted on the community were visible in the hesitant glances and the slow rebuilding of trust among neighbors. The reverberations of that dark chapter continued to be felt in local customs, legal reforms, and the lingering unease in collective memory. In time, the painful lessons learned from these events led to significant reforms in legal practices as authorities sought to safeguard against the irrational conflation of fear and justice. The tragic legacy spurred deliberate efforts to temper passion with reason, urging future generations to question and critically assess the power of unfounded allegations. The witch trials became a profound cautionary tale that resonated far beyond Salem, warning against the dangers of unchecked fear and the societal temptation to scapegoat the vulnerable. Ultimately, the scars left by those tumultuous times provided an enduring testimony to the need for compassion, rigorous evidence, and thoughtful introspection. The memory of Salem serves as a lasting reminder that while darkness may descend, the commitment to truth and justice is essential. Drawing the final curtain on this dark chapter of American history, we find that the Salem Witch Trials offer a compelling study of the interplay between fear, faith, and the human condition. Through the trials, we observe how the unbridled power of mass hysteria can override rational thought and transform solid evidence into whispered rumors. In reflecting on these events, it becomes clear that the tragedy was not merely a series of unfortunate incidents, but a collective failure of a society to balance conviction with compassion. The emotional intensity of those troubled days, marked by deep-seated suspicions and irreversible consequences, offers a timeless lesson on the perils of succumbing to unfounded fears. The narrative of Salem is steeped in contrasts: the rational versus the superstitious, the personal versus the communal, and the transient versus the enduring. In its wake, a lingering reminder persists that even the most closely knit communities are vulnerable to internal strife when faced with the extraordinary pressures of societal upheaval. Each moment, from the first whispered accusation to the final courtroom verdict, contributes to an enduring dialogue about the necessary interplay between justice and mercy. History beckons us to revisit these lessons, urging us to remain vigilant against the dangers of instant judgment and collective blame. In a broader sense, the legacy of Salem transcends its specific historical context. It challenges modern interpretations of evidence and truth, compelling us to scrutinize the mechanisms by which we assign guilt and propagate fear. The dark allure of the trials has left a permanent imprint on the American psyche, serving as a conduit through which warnings about prejudice and the abuse of power continue to echo. It is a narrative that, while rooted in a time long past, resonates strongly in today's world, where rumors and rapid judgment can still unravel lives with devastating speed. As we consider the profound implications of Salem's past, we are reminded that the pursuit of truth must never be compromised by the seduction of fear. In contemplating these events, let us embrace a call to empathy and a commitment to reason, values that bridge the gap between historical missteps and the promise of a more just future. The story of Salem remains a beacon, guiding us to seek justice tempered with human understanding, now and always. This enduring legacy calls us to remember, learn, and build a society where truth triumphs over unfounded fear without compromise.